Hey, this is Ryan. Welcome back to this channel. Today I'll be going over the hacks for the fiction passages on the SAT. If you want to follow along, the link is down below. We're covering the College Board's official test number 4, Module 1, questions 5. We're going to start from 5 and then go through all the fiction passages. Now, fiction passages can be very interesting because to some, very minority, but to some, this is very interesting and fun because they spend all their childhood reading books, they love books and so forth. So this is a breeze. But for the majority of us, fiction is not easy because it's a made up story that comes from the imagination of an author. And that can be daunting at times because stories can really deep dive into the creative world of authors from all over the world. So the hack is instead of trying to understand every single thing that the author says and deep dive into the story, you got to stay a little bit away from it and keep that distance and try to really grasp what is the main idea, what is the main subject, what is the main object, right? And maybe the linking mechanism behind the two. I'll easily explain this hack by showing you what I call the panoramic approach or the panoramic view. And this hack works for every single fiction passage on the SAT. So if you look down here, it says the following text is taken from Susan so-and-so. You don't need to read the author's name. A lot of authors' names can be very difficult to pronounce even. So the effort that you put into it is really not worth it because nothing there is really that important in terms, unless you've seen, the author's work before, but most likely it's not going to make a difference at all. So here, it was written by Susan. Great. 1912, does that matter? Not really. Does the title matter out there? For poems, yes, but for most narratives, like made-up stories, absolutely not. So here, we're going to cross out and then jump over this and go straight to what we call the opening blurb or kind of explanation as to what the story is about. And this portion right here can account up to 50% of what you need to know. So this is the main thing that you should focus on instead of the story itself, okay? And so here it says an elderly shop owner is looking at a picture that he recently acquired and hopes to sell. Okay, cool. We know that there's a figure, an elderly man, and we know also that there's a picture. So those two are what we call the critical nouns or the keywords. We're going to start from there. The answer must contain both, and we'll check it out as we go down below. And let's start with the story. It did seem that the picture failed to fit in with the rest of the shop. So that's negative. And this tracking of positive and negative is very important. And that will give you that what I call the panoramic, meaning you're distancing yourself from the passage a little and you're seeing it from afar and giving these connotative values and keywords. Connotative value meaning, is it positive what they're saying? Is it negative what they're saying? Or is it just neutral? And the keyword meaning, what are we talking about? And how is that affecting what? Instead of all the minor details that surround them. So here it is starting with the negative. It says the picture failed to fit in. So that's not good. And then it explains how it didn't fit in. And this is what we call the detail zone. Now, if you wish to read this portion, absolutely fine. But just don't deep dive into it because then you're going to get lost in that detail and it's extremely difficult to get out of that because you have now consumed so much detail that it's going to be very difficult to decipher everything. So instead of reading word for word in the detail zone, just skim through it really fast and then pause in the second half like this. You know how there are two paragraphs. So that means I'm going to go from an idea to another idea. So I'm saying, hey, it's negative. It didn't really fit in. Blah, 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 right? I call it the blah, blah zone, but you don't have to. If you want to read it, read it. And then it says, and yet the old man was secretly proud of this acquisition. So that's positive. So it's going from a negative to a positive. So now let's recap. You have the elderly man, the shop owner. You have the picture. Picture doesn't fit in that well, but the owner likes it. That's it. That's what we call panoramic. Like you're not really zooming into anything. You're just seeing it from afar. The panoramic stage says, I have two emotions towards it, right? So the owner says, you know what? It's not really fitting into the shop, but I like it. Okay, so now when we look at the answers, I'm looking for that conflicting emotion of whom, though? Of the shop owner. So if I look at ABCD, the first thing I look for is the shop owner. I need that. So A has it, obviously. B has it. Most likely, everything will have it because that's like the major thing. Oh, so this one doesn't have. So D doesn't have a shop owner, but we're talking about the shop owner. That's the main subject, right? So we got to have it. Followed by what? The picture, right? So we got the picture. I got the picture there. See, it doesn't have a picture. You got to explicitly mention that. It's not items. I'm just talking about one picture. So I got the two. See, we eliminated two just by knowing the nouns. Now we deep dive and we go to reveal the shop owner's conflicting feelings. See how you go from negative to positive, positive, negative. That's conflicting right there. B says to convey the shop owner's resentment, which is negative, of the person he got the new picture from. Well, there's no other person in here, and you only have a negative. I go from a negative to positive here, which is exactly what I'm looking at, right there, right? I'm going to grab that. But if you look at B, it's just negative. I don't have a positive. I didn't switch. Where is my secretly proud? So B's out, A's it. Let's do the same thing for number 6 here. The following text, blah, blah, blah. Again, the author's name, the title doesn't matter. The only thing that matters right there is that we're talking about cypress. Cypress is a type of evergreen tree. And then I'm going to read it. It says, I have just seen the most beautiful thing. Okay, that's positive. And see how immediately it starts describing how it is beautiful. So you always state an idea and you always go to a detail. If you understand the idea, you don't need the detail. Details exist to supplement the idea, to describe it, to make it real. But if you accept the idea and you don't need the detail, you can skim through it or you can jump over it. And then as you cross the second half, it says, why, beautiful still finger, are you black? So I'm asking something. And why are you pointing upwards? So I'm questioning the validity as to why. So I'm going to put why there. So the first half, I always like to cut it in half, and you should to every paragraph, whether it be fiction or nonfiction, you cut it in half and you place A and B. The mid zone usually is detail. So I'm going to stay focused to the first 3 lines, 2-3 lines, and last 2-3 lines. It says, I've just seen the most beautiful thing. Cool. Why are you this way? Why are you this way? So I am asking to why, the validity, right? I'm asking for the validity. So what are we talking about? So you always start with that question, whether it be fiction or nonfiction. What are we talking about? We're talking about the evergreen, right? The evergreen tree called the cypress. And then it's so beautiful. So I got this positive thing going on. And then I'm asking, I end the passage with, why are you so beautiful? So you look at the answer choices. A says that the speaker says a natural phenomenon that questions the accuracy. We'll never talk about the accuracy, you know, how accurate it is. There's nothing in the second half that says that. Accuracy question should be, hey, how is this made in a certain way? Or how is this perfect? Or how can this be 100%? Or how is this compared to other? That's accuracy question. We're not doing any of that. The speaker describes a distinctive sight, could be, then ponders the meaning is the why, right? I'm asking the why. What is the meaning? Why? Why is it that way? So I am talking about a distinctive sight, which can be beautiful thing, amazing. And then I'm saying, hey, why is it that way? So most likely it's going to be B. The speaker presents an outdoor scene, then considers a human behavior. We don't have any human behavior. Everything there is about cypress, the evergreen tree. D says the speaker examines her surrounding, then speculates about their influence on her emotional state. Well, we're not talking about her. Everything is about the cypress. And also, we're not really speculating, you know, a lot of people fall for it because of the question mark. But this is not about the influence on the author, on the person, right? This is about just the site and saying, why are you that way? But I'm not asking how you are influencing me. So D's out, C's out. Obviously, the answer is B. And then we continue to number 7. It says the following is a blah, 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 right? Again, you skip the names and so forth. Don't get too caught up with that. It's not that important. I hear it is charged against me that I seek to destroy institution. Hey, you're accusing me of something. Okay, I'm upset here. Okay, you're accusing me of something. But then you can go again. This detail, whatever follows after that claim, will be detailed to back up what I just said. I draw a line somewhere in the middle, and then I resume from the middle, and you can skim through it. It says, only I will establish in the Manhattan, which is Manhattan. The natives call it Manhattan. And then in every of these states, inland and seaboard, blah, blah, blah. So again, I go into that blah, 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 which is detail. So if you pay attention to the first, mid, and last, This is where the ideas usually reside. I hear that is charged against me something. Only I will do this. Meaning this is more like call to action or actionable stuff, right? Only I will do this X, right? I will establish this. The institution of the dear love of comrades. So this is how I end. So what am I looking at? The question is asking for structure. Whenever they ask for structure, you draw a line into A, B, C. So again, beginning point, midpoint, and ending point. The question here about structure is how do you go from A to C through B? If that makes sense. So you're going from A to C, but the transition is going to be somewhere in the middle in B. And all you got to do is answer that question. So I go, hey, I was charged of something and I'm pretty mad here, right? I'm pretty mad. Only I, which is extreme, hey, you charging me of something, but only I will do this, I will establish this. So this is action. And then it ends in a positive, the institution of a dear, right? Of dear love or a dear love of comrades. Okay, cool. So when I look at the answer choices, let's go over it. The speaker questions an increasing prevalent attitude, then summarizes his worldview. No, not really. It is questioning, but it is questioning the attack on himself, right? So the speaker is pretty upset that he is being attacked or charged of something that he didn't do. B says the speaker regrets his isolation from others, then predicts a profound change in society. So this is like, hey, people don't like me, but then you know what? I am going to change the society. Well, it could be, but this is not about people not liking me. I'm just being charged of something. And then the profound, meaning very deep change in society, was never stated in the second half. C says the speaker concedes his personal shortcoming, meaning I am accepting that I lack something, my weaknesses, then boast of his many achievements. And I'm just talking about how I am so amazing, which is not true. D says the speaker addresses the criticism, see that? That's against me, level against him, which is literally what says right up there. And then announces a grand ambition of his, which is what I intend to do, institution of the dear love of comrades, which is very positive. That's my ambition. I'm going to do that. So the answer is D. I'm going to skip 8 and 9 and go straight to 10 because 8 and 9 are not typical what we call fiction type of question. These are function questions, which we'll come back and address. Number 10, it says the following text, blah, blah, blah. It says a young girl recently found an overgrown hidden garden. So I have a young girl, subject, and I have the garden, the receiver, right? So two nouns. You always have to find two nouns, right? One that is doing the action, and the other one most likely will be receiving that action. It says Mary was an odd, determined little person, and now she had something interesting to be determined about, and she was very much absorbed. So very absorbed. I love it, right? And towards the end, it says it seemed to her like a fascinating sort of play. What? The garden, right? That she found. So let's go over the answer choices. A, Mary hides in the garden to avoid her chores. That's quite negative, which is not true. Mary's getting bored with pulling up so many weeds in from the garden, which is kind of negative too, which is not true. The entire passage is very positive. Mary is clearing out the garden to create space to play, which is neutral, but it's not really what's happening. It says that I love the garden and it is a fascinating sort of play. So it's got to be very positive. The answer has to stay positive. If you look at D, Mary feels very satisfied, which is the only positive in the four answer choices, when she's taking care of the garden, which is exactly what it says. She found an overgrown hidden garden and she loves staying and working on it. So now we go to 11. It says that the story is based on the work of Marcantonio Flaminio. Does that matter? Not really. Let's start. As a fragile and lovely flower unfolds its gleaming foliage on the breast of the fostering earth. Okay, so we know it's positive, right? And then we're talking about nature, right? It seems like it's the flower and then it's gleaming foliage and then you're growing and being fostered. But it's pretty cool. And then we go into that blah, blah zone of detail, which again substantiate what I just said. But then somewhere in the middle, remember that switch. Every fiction passage is going to have that. Here it says, lacking this, it's beginning straightway to languish. What does that mean? So it means that whatever this is, the condition that I need, if I don't have that, I'm going to, languish means weaken. So I'm going to become weak. So I focus on that. So I have whatever it is, lacking this, meaning this is a prerequisite, a requirement for me to be positive. And if I don't have that, I'm going to become negative and become weak. So when I look at the answer choices, I'm looking for that. It becomes increasingly vigorous with the passage of time. That's all positive. There's no negative. There's nothing that says about lacking this. B says it draws strength from changes in the weather. That has nothing to do with what we just read. It requires proper nourishment in order to thrive. See, that requirement is exactly what lacking this is going to become negative. So I need, in other words, I need this positive. So it's pretty dirty here. So let me get rid of all these so you can take a look. It's saying, hey, I have all these positive things, right? Whatever that is, right? I need whatever that positive is. If I don't have that, I'm going to become negative. So that means I'm talking about a requirement for me to stay nourishment positive. That's it. So answer is C. And we'll do number 12, which is the last fiction passage in Module 1. And it says, well, Call of the Wild, Buck is a sled dog living with John Thornton in Yukon, Canada. Okay, so you have two. I start with the dog. So it seems like Buck, the dog, is more important in this case. And then the owner is most likely John Thornton because the sled dog is living with its owner. Here it says Thornton alone held Buck. The rest of mankind was as nothing. Okay, so that's the bond, that's the relationship that these two have. Chance travelers might praise or pet him, but he was cold under it all, and from a too demonstrative man, he would get up and walk away. So that means he wasn't interested in anyone else but Thornton. It says, when Thornton's partner Hans and Pete arrive on the long-expected raft, Buck refused to notice them until he learned they were close to Thornton. So you say, you got this lovely bond between Thornton and the dog. So when you look at the answer choices, you need what? You need Thornton, you need the dog, Buck, and then relationship and how Buck loves Thornton. Because there's nothing in this passage that talks about how Thornton feels about the dog. So I got to say, hey, Buck really likes Thornton above anyone else. Because it does talk about other people, right? So you got chance travelers, you got the partners, Hans and Pete, they all come in. The dog doesn't care, right? So A says that Buck has become less social since he began living with Thornton. That's an awful assumption. Yes, he might not like other people other than Thornton. Doesn't mean that he has become less social. Maybe he was always antisocial. How do you know? B says Buck mistrusts humans and does his best to avoid them. Again, that's an awful assumption too. Some people might assume that because he's not nice to other people. But mistrusting, so you're going way too negative with this. And also, it doesn't have Thornton. So B doesn't have Thornton. I need that, okay? Remember, those two nouns have to exist in the correct answer. B says Buck has been especially well-liked by most of Thornton's. Well, absolutely not. We never talk about other people liking Buck. It only says that Buck avoids them until he learns that Thornton is close to them, and maybe he'll open up. And D says Buck holds Thornton in higher regards than any other person, which is absolutely true, meaning it highlights the bond that they have. You got to start with Buck because we're not talking about Thornton or how he feels about the dog. Buck loves Thornton, higher regards than any other person. The chance travelers, you got Hans and Pete, right? So you got that comparison going on too. So absolutely, the answer is D. So the hack is to keep some distance from these passages and not get sucked into it, because if you do, everything will become a possibility, and things like a poem or a narrative will become super complex. So it is best to find who are we talking about or what are we talking about, followed by who is it affecting or what is it affecting, and link the two simply by using positive, negative, and neutral connotation. And by keeping it simple, your accuracy will go up and you will hit more correct answers than before. So keep it simple, my friends.